Hendersonville 11 and
Start a change.
Zachary needs to be picked up at 30.
I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Public Safety Committee meeting, April 11th, 2023. We have several guests here today. We have a Boy Scout visiting and several people from the police department, several citizens. So we will go ahead with our meeting. Do I have a motion to accept our agenda? Motion. I'll second. Motion approves. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the February 28th meeting? Motion to approve. I'll second. Ordinances and resolution 2023-11.
I'd like to make a motion to pull that to our next meeting.
Okay, I will second that. And next on our agenda is the discussion of the 2024 fiscal year budget review. And I will turn it over to Mr. Eckenroth for that.
Thank you. All right, I'm just gonna go pretty much from the packet in here. And kind of give an overview of how we got here. So what we have in front of you in this packet is the operations budget for fiscal year 24. So every department was asked to go ahead and anticipate what they're going to need for the next year. There were some constraints that the mayor and the executive department and finance have so that we can make a balanced budget. So we went through and kind of did some revenue forecasts. And then departments put in the requested budgets. We asked for departments on the operations side to stay within 1% of what they did the prior year. Salaries and benefits are calculated by finance. And then projects we were considering separately. So after we went through the revenue projections, departments put in their 1% increases. And then on top of the 1% increases, if there was anything where they couldn't function with that 1% increase, like a fuel needed to be 10% or 20% or 30%, we just asked for justification for those. So when we kind of sifted through that, and then we saw what the difference was between revenues and between operational expenditures, and we had a delta. And so what we used is we had some COLA percentages set aside. It said, hey, if we do a 1% COLA for employees, if we do a 2%, 3%, how much of the delta does that mean? So Demerit asked that we use a 6% COLA. So we did a 6% COLA. And after we had all departments expenditures in, it left $1,900, approximately $1,900. So we have a 6% COLA included. And then the operational budgets included here. We don't have capital projects in here yet. There's a list at the end that gives a summary of some of the major projects that we have, but we're going to continue to go through and refine that project list. We're actually working on that now, so probably by next week we'll have that wrapped up. So if you want to go to fire and PD, we can kind of walk through those ones. Police is on page number 47. So there's within each department's budget, there's 3 groups. So you'll see on page 47, just as the salaries and benefits. So this calculates all the salaries and benefits for all the full-time, part-time positions. This includes overtime, health benefits, longevity pay, dental insurance, life insurance. So everything that's associated with an employee. It might not be what an employee takes home, but it's associated with keeping those employees. So that's wrapped up under salaries and benefits. And this is calculated by finance. So we take all of our positions, we assume a rate for health insurance increases. We haven't gotten that rate yet. We're out to bid on it. but we've assumed an increase in this. Then we added a 6% COLA to all the employees, which is baked into here. And then all of their benefits, so overtime, Social Security, Medicare, all that stuff is included. We've included the COLA upticks in all those expenditures. And so if you look on page 50, the next page, you'll see total salaries and benefits of 15,205,000 for PD. So that sets a limit on what we are allowed to spend before we have to go back and do a budget amendment. We're not limited by each of these individual line items. This total that says salaries and benefits of $15,205,800. That's what sets the limit for what we can spend for within salaries and benefits for PD. So it shows a 7.3% uptick. Largely, that's just going to be your 6% increase. There's some health insurance increases that were added onto that, but you're going to probably see between 7, 8, 9% in most departments because of the 6% COLA. The next category is assets. So we have kind of just 3 rows in here where we're talking about assets. We categorize them as under 1,000, 1,000, 7,000, 7,000. So we have placed, I think, 10 vehicle purchases and outfits within this total assets. The assets from 1,000 to 7,000 is what we use to outfit lights and sirens and those things. That's the bucket used for the lights and sirens and all the outfitting. And then the purchase of the vehicles themselves comes from assets in 1,000. So when we originally went through the budget, we were trying to prioritize COLAs as much as possible. So we originally had, there was a request in here for 20 vehicles right off the get-go. When we originally went through all the budgets and the requests, like there was a room for 1%. So we just went back to every department and said, hey, can we refigure some of the department expenditures? Can we refigure some of the assets? So what we did with PD, where we could find some room for goals, was we took the 20 vehicles and we said, hey, let's divide them 10 at mid-year, and let's do 10 right up front with the beginning of the budget. Now we think we have an opportunity this year maybe to do another 4 vehicles. So we may be able to purchase 4 vehicles this year, do 10 with this budget, and then 6 at mid. So this is one of those areas where we said, yeah, we'd like to have 20, but we can't do everything. So how do we balance it? So that's where we set all the assets. Continuing projects. I don't have a list of that. Do you know that 94,000? I think that is for the unit 94,500. So that wasn't.
No, it should be the mobile command, part of the range.
Okay.
With this operation in K9 that wasn't covered by the grant.
Yeah, so I think continuing projects is a combination of some repairs and some upgrades to the mobile command unit. Some other items that are still needed at the gun range, and the K9, the new K9. So we're probably going to take that K9 and put it into the drug fund. So we're still working on projects and continuing projects. This is where we're focusing the bulk of our time, but we'll probably continue to see the mobile command unit in here as well as the gun range. Now the gun range we previously budgeted, so it's not new dollars, but we want to make sure that everything has its plan to spend for that year. And then operational expenses. This is where PD held it to 1%. You can see it's 0.99%. So just a minor, just a very minor increase on the operational side of things. On the operational side of things. So assets increased 4.71%. That's where we're going to purchase vehicles. Salaries and benefits 7.3%, and then on the operational 0.99. So overall, that budget increase is 7.12%. And that's from that increase is from the original budget from the previous year. Any questions? Okay, so the fire department, the structure of how the budget works is exactly the same. So you can see in on page 50 where it starts salaries and benefits, we do Again, full-time salaries. We have some part-time. We did increase the overtime salaries this year. It's a 32.83% uptick from the previous year. And that's to account for fire station number 7 coming on board. So as we have less bodies at each station, the need for overtime is going to increase. So we did account for some overtime there. Again, the uptick in salaries is included in all the benefits that are associated with salaries. And assets, there was request for some boat equipment here, but again, this is one of the areas where we didn't have the room to do everything. And we did include a transfer to the equipment replacement fund of $350,000. We didn't go off any particular schedule. What we did is we looked at everything, our delta between revenues and expenses when we were done after a 6% COLA. And this was a number that we could plug in here and still not be in the red. So this was a number that we plugged to say, hey, let's account for something. This is probably not a final number, but it is something we're accounting for it. But that was a plug number, so we could just.
That will go to the fund to purchase the fire trucks. Okay.
Yeah,
Is this one coming up in 24 or no? 2024?
depends what schedule we kind of get on, but at least there's something that's
Okay,
just planned in here. And again, we didn't go off the schedule. We just said, hey, what is left over? Can we put something in? Let's start taking it out now. So there's $350,000. In the original request, there was some sonar equipment and 2 engines for the boat, the fire engine boat. But COLA, we did determine was a higher priority.
so they did not get sonar
Yeah.
and boat
And
engines.
2 boat engines. I think it was 2 boat engines, right?
Yeah, it's got dual motors, Mercury, and Mercury's out of business. So if one of them goes down, we're gonna have a really difficult time finding parts and getting that back in service.
I think PD just had to run down to, what you guys get in Mississippi to buy one. They used one too on theirs.
Bought a rebuilt lower unit.
Because do they make those engines for your guys' boat too?
Not that, the company is still in business because those are Honda motors, but the problem is that year model, they don't make that engine anymore, so. We were going all over, and that was the closest one we could find. There was another one in New York State, and they said, we don't ship, you have to pick it up. And there was another one in southern Florida that said, we don't ship, you have to pick it up, so. And this one actually turned out to be the cheapest in Mississippi anyways. We sent an officer down there to get it. It's already installed and operational.
All right, so if we go to, there's no projects. If we go to operational expenses, this is fuel, advertising, uniforms. I guess the first big increase we'll see on page 51 is 41,000 for fuel. That's the account for another fire station being open and the cost of fuel going up. So we'll have another engine running there pretty soon. You can see all the utilities are upticking a little bit. That's to account for another station being open. We decreased repair and maintenance of buildings just to kind of keep our budget tight, and we had utilized all those in the past. We just done a new roof on fire station number 3, fire station 7 is done. So hopefully, as we're staying on top of these projects too, we'll see our costs, our annual maintenance costs come down from what it was last year. But pretty minor changes overall in the department. You can see the operational increase 6.79% for a grand total of 7.43% increase from the prior year budget to this current budget. So total for fires just north of 14 million. So that's kind of the PD and fire. If you go to page number 11, this gives a breakdown of the. Okay. This just gives a breakdown of each department. It gives an increase over the original operating budget fiscal year 23. So if we go to HPD, you can see overall they're about a 7.12% increase for a total budget of almost $18 million. And then fire is 7.43% increase with a budget just north of $14 million. So when you take all the department's budgets, it totals $85,815,140, and our revenues are anticipated to be $58,817,76. So that leaves us in the black $1,936 before we get into projects. So, you know, I mean, this isn't as, I guess we want to see more surplus than we're seeing now. But we did have a 6% COLA last year, 6% COLA this year, so this year's COLA built on top of last year's COLA. We are including some money for the apparatus replacement, which we previously hadn't done. And we're including 10 vehicles in the PD budget. Begin this. So those are kind of the highlights for the budget. I'm happy to get any other department as well. Or we're all here for questions. Or anything in the budget, but that's kind of a highlight.
So you have any questions?
I think my question is sort of general, this budget impacts, the level of service that we offer for both departments.
Yeah, so I think one of the things we're trying to do is not decrease level of service. So not let positions go, not let folks go, and not shut down any stations, not decommission vehicles. I think the way it's set up, it allows us to continue operations. It doesn't give every department everything they want, but it gives a substantial COLA. It lets us keep operating. And we allow for, for fire, Chief Bush did account for Fire Station 7 coming on. We've went back and forth and kind of shaved a little bit here and there to try and make the budget as tight as possible. But there are some built-in factors for Station 7. And then the other thing too is now that we've kind of established a pattern of doing a mid-year budget review, it allows us to be a little more conservative on the front end because we know if we run into issues, things that are unforeseen, we always have the mid-year to come back and take a look at revenues again. One thing that we didn't have in last year's budget, we do in this is we're including an account for insurance. So these windstorm damages that kind of, I think we've had some bit, both fire and PD. And then for the smaller grants, we're including a grant line item too, where we don't come back with for insurance reimbursement, appropriations and these small grant appropriations. Yes.
No, I think it's important. I've said this before. I mean, granted, our budget had to be tight, but I think our employees are very, very important. And doing what we can to retain those employees that we have currently, and we've invested a lot of time in training into, is super important. So if we have to cut somewhere in order to do that, I think that's very reasonable. We managed to stay within the guidelines and maintain operations at current levels.
My concern is obviously retention and keeping folks. You spend a bunch of money on getting trained and you hate to see them leave. And obviously we're in the middle of a pay study. And this is not including anything with the pay study. So whatever those results may come back, that's going to come before y'all as well. On funding, and it looks like we've got $1,900.
Yeah,
So,
it wasn't. No department wanted the cuts. We went to every department to cut from the requests, right? I mean, some requests are like sometimes it can be a wish list, but I mean, there are real things. We went back and said, hey, can we take $1,000 off? Can we can we cut electricity? The Station 7 are really going to need 20,000. Can it maybe take 18,000? Like, we went back into it and tried to look at that level of detail to be conservative.
So I'll say this too, with building maintenance, I mean, we've got 6 locations. When 7 opens up, we'll have 7 locations. And in order to maintain those buildings, we've got to pay parking lots. We've got to maintain the buildings. I mean, you and I have been talking about painting Station 3. So there's things we've got to do And it just takes money to do it. And again, I'm always gonna side on the folks getting more money. Because they're worth it to me for the job they do and the work they're out doing every day. So I mean, obviously, if you gotta make cuts, you gotta make cuts. But I think potentially assets could suffer from that because we're not maintaining parking lots and buildings as well as we maybe should. Time will tell on that. That's one of those things that you don't know until something happens or it's on down the road. I do know there's a couple of stations I'm probably gonna ask to get the parking lots paved with that money that we have this year. It just depends on how expensive it is. Try to do a small one and a big one.
They haven't mentioned those trucks tearing up in and out, you know, the weight.
So 3 is really done. We've done really well with public works in the past. We poured concrete. And so that's really helped reduce that. And there's still some sections at Station 3 that needs to be poured in concrete, 1 or 2, not very many. Station 5 is one of those parking lots I'd like to try to do something with that has one of those truck companies at it. The other one, I'll either try to do Station 1 or Station 4, try to get their parking lots paved. So
You have to tell me which one is 5
hospital, over by the hospital,
and which one is 4.
Indian Lake.
Okay. I'm probably never. gonna-
So, you know, and that'll be just something we talk about with Sarah and that's her expertise is which ones need it the most and let her decide. You know, I don't want to sit there and tell you that I feel like 4 is more important than 3 or 5. That needs to come from somebody who dabbles in that every day. Not
When are the results of the pay study due back? Is it just,
I think we expect them end of the month. We've already gotten the results back for the pension costs and for healthcare costs. The consultant had to extend the deadlines because some of the cities weren't giving the information on salaries as timely as they wanted. But expect to have it happen.
okay. Anyone else have anything on the budget? Next is code red parameters.
All right. Well, I'll introduce this and then let Casey kind of take it over. With Casey being here and, you know, the public information officer is new to the city. We've had code red in place, fire departments managed code red, taken it on, learned it, implemented it. Loved it, but it's just really fits in Casey's wheelhouse and we use it between multiple departments, so we can use it for public works, fire and PD. And what we wanted to do was since there's multiple users who can hop on code red and do an alert, we wanted to create some consistency for when these messages are sent out, how they're sent out, you know. So basically a framework for when we would send a code red out. So Casey got a meeting together with PD, fire, public works, kind of sat down with everyone, got input from them, and then went over some of the parameters for code red. So I'll let Casey take it from there.
Yeah, thanks. So yes, I've spent a lot of time since I started meeting with fire and police at different times and public works. I think the biggest hurdle in creating this framework was defining what is an actual emergency, because a lot of times that's in the eye of the beholder. And when we would use the code red for emergencies versus general, when a user goes to sign up for code red, the automatic enroll is for emergency. They have other options to select general, and then the weather related is not an automatic as well. And so they go into kind of different buckets at that point where you could send out something as an emergency and that would go to everyone on the list, because if you're on the list, you're in the emergency bucket. Or you could send something out as general, which would go to the people who have selected general only, meaning they're interested in something besides emergency. And then the weather, kind of as listed here, goes out through code red. We have nothing to do with that. That's automated through the National Weather Service. So we looked at it. We did create some basic definitions, knowing it's a little bit gray for what would be considered an emergency versus a general type of communication that we would send out through both fire and police. Most of the communications that have gone out through code red, I looked back a little over 2 years, were all mostly coming from the PD. They were related to wrecks, of traffic issues, sometimes of parade notifications for road closures, things of that nature. So we really wanted to work with them to define when we would be using it for that and what times. And I think the biggest thing is we want to make it something where users aren't being annoyed by code red, because inevitably when a code red goes out, sometimes there's those users who are upset because they got it after 10 o'clock at night or in the middle of the night at different times. So we wanted to make sure that we were being respectful of those who signed up and we were using the emergency notification system properly. So we think in this framework, we've kind of established that. And we've talked through PD and fire with this to determine how we would move forward. There is potential to expand this. One of the things I learned when I kind of did the deep dive into code red is that they have ways we can use it for the general notifications. And that could be more something that we expand for public works. It could be a way that we reach residents about trash schedule changes due to weather related events or a holiday reminder about trash, because that has single-handedly been one of the biggest communication things we're trying to juggle. And right now, that's the most people we have and the easiest way we have to reach them. I hope to expand that going forward, but at this time, that's our largest way to reach residents right now is through there. So we could potentially expand the use of this and use it for just general notifications related to other things for the city. I don't know that it would be texting just every little thing, but other things that are important for households, again, thinking of mostly the trash. The name code red kind of makes you think that everything coming through there is emergency because the app name is code red. But in reality, most of it that could be used for is not an emergency.
Yeah, so on page 69, it's an example of how it could be branded. And just call it HVAC alert. So that is something we're looking at, and this is kind of just an FYI. Is there is opportunity beyond what we're using it for, a few other things. So it's something that we are considering, and the whole premise of why we're bringing this to you is because we want to set expectations for everyone and everyone to have the same expectations. So if we send something out or don't send something out, it's because we're following kind of a prescriptive format that has said, yeah, I think this is a good plan, or hey, it's not, we need to add to, we need to take away from it. And one of the things, like Kate said, we're sensitive to is either not doing it enough or doing it too much. And sometimes at 1 o'clock at night, you know, when Main Street's going to be shut down for 3 hours, you know, it doesn't need to go out at 1 in the morning because it's not going to affect people. Right. So we just kind of set some hours around, you know, when it would be appropriate. I'm sure there's some people who would want more, some people who might want less, but we think this is a pretty good balance of that. So we want just to make sure we have clear expectations from everyone on when these are going to be sent out, when they're not going to be sent.
I think the thing I would add is that when we have a situation that people are really nervous about, like when we have the manhunt in River Chase, there's a need to also send an all clear, because people need to know that they're good and that reassurance. In general, I think if there's a way to include some reassurance in the message that it's being handled or that they are safe, or if they just don't do X, they'll be fine. That would be good, because I think that's the majority of calls that I get after a message has gone out is, well, whatever happened? Well, is it better? Are we safe now? That kind of thing. So that people need that reassurance. So if it's something that ends, say it's ended.
Agree. And one of the things we've done by establishing this framework is helping to make there be some more consistencies, because there were times, because again, some people register with an email, some people register with a phone and they want to text, some people want a phone call. And when you have different users coming in and out of a system using it for different times, and often when they're busy juggling their job as first responders, sometimes an initial message would go out via a phone call, but then the second follow-up message might go out as a text, and those aren't the same people. So some people might get a phone call and never a follow-up phone call, and some people are getting a text and didn't even know that there was something. So by creating this framework and trying to centralize it, and it's going to help alleviate some of those problems, and it'll be more consistent and better for residents.
And there's sometimes where code red will get set out through the county, and we don't really have any control over that. So some of these notices do get sent out by the county. And, you know, we have reached out to the county. We want to work with them to be as consistent as possible, but at least for what we send out, we definitely want to keep it nice, clean, consistent, follow up, and make sure everyone's on the same page.
You have a question?
Yeah, how many people signed up for GoGrant?
So we have a little over 8,000 right now in the total bucket. That would be the people for emergencies. When you start breaking it down to those who have signed up for general or those that have signed up for weather, the numbers get a little bit lower because there's some people that just sign up and only want emergency. The thing that's interesting is people can go in and sign up and be under the emergency, but not click the weather, which means they're not signed up for weather. They would just be signed up for an emergency notification that we would send as the city. But at most, just a little over 8,000 right now.
That's not a lot. Considering our population here.
That's gone up a lot in the past year.
It has, it's gone up. Yeah. It's gone up just since I've been there. So it's growing. We definitely would like to do some promotion and try to help it grow, but we didn't want to do that until we kind of had a good framework around how we're going to use it. Did we want to potentially expand it? What might that look like?
Anybody else? Okay, and under other business, we have the baby box, and the mayor has left. Who's gonna talk about that?
On one that met with them, so I'll try to give the 30,000 foot level. So Baby Box is a 501c3 nonprofit, and they approached myself about the opportunity for them to install one of these at one of our stations. They weren't going to pick which station. They basically gave me the information that's in this packet, and we had a pretty good discussion about really what's the idea about Baby Box. And so basically it's just a place for maybe a parent or parents that have a child that are unsure if they can take care of it. They can bring it to the closest station that has one of these. It's a box that's going to be built by this 501c3. It's all funding through them. It'll have a bassinet in it. It'll be triggered with alarms. So when they put something that weighs over, I don't know, she told me like 7, 8, 9, 10 ounces a pound, whatever that number was, that will trigger that alarm. Once they shut the door on the outside, they cannot open that door again. So once the baby is placed inside there, it now becomes the property of the city and or the fire department. Obviously, if folks are there, they'll trigger an alarm at the station. They'll immediately go to the box, open it up from inside, and make sure that the baby is healthy, make sure everything's okay. There'll be some supplies there that we can, take care of the baby for a short time, because again, let's say it comes in at 8:30 and then at 8:45, we catch a call and both of the pieces of equipment have to leave from this particular location. Somebody would have to stay behind for that child. We're not just going to leave the baby there by itself. So that's logistically going to be some things we'll have to work through as an organization. If they're already out on the call and that door shut and the alarm is sounded, it'll notify the supervisor. The supervisor will either, if he's not tied up on my call with the companies, then he'll go over there, have access to the child. If they're busy, then it simply will roll to me and I'll send the next closest company to that station to gain access, or I'll get up and go myself, whatever needs to be done. The station we've chosen just because of location is right off the bypass, Station 5, not to mention the fact
Hospital.
it's by the hospital, which has the baby wing there. It just makes sense logistically. If somebody was to drop a child off, we can certainly maintain with an ambulance being there, medically trained staff, paramedics and EMTs. We can sustain life, or at least efforts for life. If that was the worst case scenario, then we have access to take it to the hospital there within a matter of seconds, if not minutes. Plus, it's right on a major thoroughfare. We're going to be the first department in the Middle Tennessee area that would accept this if the mayor and the COO accept it, or you folks accept to want to do this. Knoxville has just had 1 or 2 installed, and then Carmel, Indiana. And I think Carmel, Indiana, there's some information in there. I know that the chief there, and I've spoken to him about it. In 2022, they received 3 babies in a 5-week period that were dropped off. And so you never know. I know there was an incident in Nashville where one was recovered a few months ago in a dumpster. And obviously, we want to try to do our part to alleviate that, whether it's somebody from Nashville driving to Sumner Regional or driving to Hendersonville Hospital, and they're unsure what they're going to do with this child. There was some discussion about the police department being one. And we pretty much landed on the fact that people would feel nervous about that. They'd be more apt to put it in a dumpster or leave it alone somewhere for fear of repercussions from the police department. But that's not the idea behind this. We're not looking to chastise folks. We're not looking to punish them for abandoning a child. We're going to take care of the child.
Or no repercussions if they.
No, there's some state law that's been changed that's mentioned in here. State Bill 1146 is a new amendment that allows for or improves safe haven measures. So basically, after 30 days, that baby becomes property of the state. And then they can put it up for adoption once it goes through their processes. We're just basically a place for somebody to come, drop a child off versus the other alternative of not taking care of it very well, or putting it in a dumpster, or leaving it somewhere where it does not need to be. I mean, to me, it's a win-win situation.
Sounds like a great program.
It's just a great opportunity. Again, I think that incident was in January 23. I see that on here now. And you know, that baby was left in a dumpster, and there's just no excuse for that. If we can give somebody an opportunity to make a better decision, why would we not do that?
And we have had that situation locally. It's been a few years, I'm vague on the details, but.
We've had some incidents with kids that are undernourished and things like that, that some different things have happened. I don't really want to get into the specifics of that because that's more law enforcement involved as well. But obviously, if this is an avenue for somebody to have a childbirth and give it to somebody that's going to take care of it, I don't see why we wouldn't do it. It's just my opinion.
So do we need to send that to final? For approval?
But there's no cost to us.
Yeah, I think we've discussed it here, so we can continue to dig into the details.
Send it to-
There'll be a contract that the mayor has to sign, obviously, to agree to it. And when I met with them, they've already got money that people have donated from the community here for the specific place. So if we don't do it, Gallatin could do it, Springfield could do it, and that money is going to leave Sumner County and go somewhere else.
Does the box get tested to
Mhm.
make sure the alarm works?
Yes, ma'am. There's 128 of them across the nation. Like I said, I'm refreshing as I turn the pages here. I mean, it's again, one fire station or hospital willing to accept a baby box. Staff will be trained. They'll come in and train our people on what to do, how to do it. Obviously, we're already medically trained. We won't need that side of it, but it just, I don't know, it just makes sense to me.
Anything else?
And make a motion to adjourn.
Second.